Today we're going to analyze a hand between Prodigy and Linus that really went out of hand, so to say. Very unusual lines were taken. Prodigy makes a 3-bet with the queen 7 off. If it's a 3-bet, it's going to be a very low frequency one. A board hits that is pretty good for Prodigy, especially also for his hand. I think this should be a very high frequency c-bet with his hand. And apparently he bets a sizing that Linus feels obliged to call. A very solid backdoor nut flush draw. Ace hits. Prodigy, that's also still a pretty good card for Prodigy's range, I suppose, right? He's gonna have still a lot of good aces that is also just gonna c-bet that board. So Prodigy does bet big again. He's probably just gonna have one big sizing. Linus has an easy call. And so the river is where the hand really goes off the rails. I think Prodigy should usually just value bet his hand, right? He can get called by a bunch of hands that would otherwise check back. Instead he goes for the very tricky line, right? He isn't blocking any pairs, which should incentivize him to bet more than check actually. Like if he would have a 9-7 or an a7, then maybe he has way more reason, right, to go for the check here. But instead he goes for the check with the queen 7 here. Linus seemingly has a very easy check back because Prodigy should have a bunch of better aces that just check this river. And he goes for the shove, which is extremely interesting. And even right now as I'm seeing this, I'm not fully sure if this was a value bet or a bluff. It seems like a very strange play by Linus on the river, and I'm super curious to see the solve output, so let's get into it. Okay, starting with pre-flop. So queen 7 indeed is a low frequency 3-bet given the sizes used. Now it apparently is indeed a pretty good board for Prodigy, right? The solver chooses a much bigger sizing than he used, but is really betting a lot, 68%. Now if we change the sizing to what Prodigy used, 575, we see the solver bets even more, 80%. And indeed, Prodigy's combo is an excellent combo to choose. Now, I do think that Linus has a pretty easy call with the ace-4 of clubs against this small sizing, which is definitely true and not even close. So that was pretty easy. Now, the turn is going to be pretty easy as well. I think Prodigy has a pretty easy bet, and indeed the queen 7 is almost a must bet. Even though Prodigy bet a little bit less, he made the good solid big bet or check kind of strategy on this kind of board. We see he indeed has a lot of these big aces here that Linus doesn't have, like the ace queen and ace king. Linus is pretty much going to 4-bet, right? We see here, if we go back to pre-flop, a lot of ace queen, ace kings are just gonna 4-bet. So Prodigy has a pretty solid range advantage here, like these big aces, like the blue line is way above the green line, so he does get to polarize here, use his sort of aces advantage to go big on the turn here. And of course the queen 7 is an absolute excellent card to barrel off here, and it's pretty much a pure bet for Prodigy here. Now I assume Linus has a very easy call, no other play. Alright, on to the river. Yeah, so the river, it was all about the river for this hand. The solver chooses an all-in or nothing, which, you know, makes sense, I suppose. And we see indeed the queen 7, like I said, is mostly just gonna be bet. Interestingly, there is a sliver of check here. So check is not a terrible play, it's just a low frequency play that Prodigy sort of found, right? Pretty tricky. But if we filter for straights here, like I mentioned ace-7 and 9-7, but it's just not in Prodigy's range. But the ones that are in Prodigy's range do indeed check. So that was at least a thing. Ace-7 is just not in Prodigy's range here. But yeah, Prodigy definitely checks some straight here. And the queen 7 is not a bad check at all. So he found a low frequency check with the queen 7. Pretty good and tricky. Now on to Linus. Yeah, and it's pretty clear Linus shoots. It was definitely not a value bet in Linus' shoes. We can see ace jack all the way up until ace queen is checking back. Like I said, like Prodigy is not allowed to bet a lot of these high aces, even ace king. So Linus pretty much is a very easy check with the ace 4 of clubs. If we look at the EVs, it's not even close. Now, we cannot immediately assume that Linus is a bad player here. He may had his exploitative reasons. Let's take a look how many aces Prodigy should really fold here. And it's indeed quite a lot. So that is it, right? And I'm pretty sure that if a player is over folding, like it can be very easy for Linus ace 4 shove to become profitable if a player is, you know, vastly overfolding this. It's doubtful that Prodigy was overfolding this, but that must be the reason. It's definitely a bluff, I know now. But then if Linus is doing that, maybe Prodigy's play was very, very good. Maybe Prodigy was in this case actually exploiting Linus by maybe pure checking the queen 7, knowing that Linus is gonna bluff hands like the ace 4. Now we don't know the dynamics, we can just see one outcome here. But it's definitely super, super off the rails what Linus was doing here. Prodigy's play was very in line with GTO across all streets. He just took some low frequency plays, but that was perfectly fine. But Linus' hand here, there can only be one reason why he did it, and that was because he assumed Prodigy was overfolding all these aces. At least we know that Prodigy, even though he may be overfolding these ace X's, and that's doubtful. I cannot remember Prodigy being, you know, an overfolder, but he definitely made a good judgment call here, checking the queen 7, given that Linus was actually bluffing with an ace here. So that is it for this video. I hoped we both learned a lot with this, and hope to see you in the next video.